Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reflection series. Today I'm going to talk about Darksiders 2. This is where if I were to put my shoes in the main character, what would I do? How would I feel? Let's get started. The journey starts us riding somewhere in the Arctic. It is very cold and you see yourself just with nothing on but a pair of pants. You must have really tough skin to endure that blazing blizzard. However, as you go through the landscape and you make your way to the final destination, you come to realize that this is the guy you're seeing that knows a guy, that knows a guy, that knows a guy. And we all know that guy. Unfortunately, there's a bad history with this guy, so you know that there's something that is about to go down. You go and visit this guy because you've come to find out that your brother has been wrongfully accused of something. And so you're here on this quest to figure out who accused him of this crime, but at the same time prove that he didn't commit the crime. And so this is a guy you start with because this is your only lead. After you fight the Crow Father, you eventually are sent to this far off land and you are greeted by an old man. The old man tells you that you are in what's called the Foundry and that the area has been consumed by the corruption. You begin by fighting some initial corrupted warriors, and afterward he then proceeds to take you to his village where you meet more people known as Makers. There is a warrior named Thane who teaches you some things and you have the ability to fight him. However, in the beginning he is way stronger than you are, and you eventually realize, you know what, maybe I need to come back once I've beefed up a little bit. So you just leave. Then you meet two smiths and they tell you who they are as people, that they are a proud group of smiths that create things. And unfortunately, given the lay of the land, everything doesn't look like it used to. And part of that is because of the corruption. And so one of the smiths tells you that if you can help them restore the flow of fire and water that the corruption has stopped, they will help you on your quest. And so you reluctantly accept because you still are on your journey and you need to keep going. You start by returning the fire to the area, and from there on your way to the area of where you have to return the flame, you meet one of the most shadiest looking people of all time. Even his voice is shady. How he pops out of the ground is shady. And his name is Volcrum. He tells you that he sells you things that most would not find appealing. So just that alone tells you something is up with this guy. Before you leave, he then tells you like, hey, help me find the pages of the Book of the Dead. You know, one, it's the Book of the Dead and they've been lost. It's like, why would he want something like that? But it's like, okay, fine. I'll help you if it's on my way and I happen to find a page. I'll collect them, bring them back to Volcrum. So you go on this journey to what's called the Fire of the Mountain to return the fire back to the area, and you meet another maker who is a warrior. Unfortunately, you learn real quick he's not the brightest of the bunch, but he is helpful. After some dungeon exploration, you bring back the flame, but at the same time as you explore the land, one of the areas you stumble across, well, initially is the Stonefather's Valley, and you just see this giant looking beast. This is blocking your way, but because it's not in your way initially, you ignore it, but you know it's there. Once you restore the flame, you go back, and now they tell you the second adventure, which is returning the flow of water, or what they call the Tears of the Mountain. Similar as before, there is a maker that helps you along the way. You bring back the flow of water, and then you come back to the other makers or the smiths, and they tell you, well, there's still more stuff you need to do because now you have to go through this big corruption that's in your way that you saw in the beginning. So again, you're like, okay, fine, I'll help you. And what do I need? Well, you need a big stone golem. However, the golem is not complete, and so you need to complete it by returning its 4 hearts. You kind of learn that along this quest that these golems were prior makers, and you're like, oh, so they don't really die, they just use their spirit and imbue it into the rocks for the most part, because you do meet some golems along the way and they just talk about how they remember their prior life, and only until later does it click like, oh, these are makers reincarnated, I guess. I think that is the best way I could describe it. So you go on this quest to restore this giant golem that will help you get past the giant corruption. You realize that there are 3 hearts needed. 2 of the hearts are fine, but the last one doesn't look right. For some reason, something is off. It has this yellow hue around it that is common in all things that are corrupted. You take a gamble, the gamble being, well, 2 of the hearts are good, only 1 heart is bad, so maybe the 2 hearts can restore that 1 heart. I think that makes perfectly good sense. 2 for 1, right? Like 2 is bigger than 1. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. That 1 corrupted heart corrupts all the other hearts, and so now you have a giant rampaging golem. In order to move forward, you have to go take care of it. As you go back to chase the giant golem, you go back through the town where you meet the other smiths, and they'll tell you that, hey, the leader doesn't know that the golem is corrupted. And so you rush to go and help him before something bad happens, and then you see that the elder maker is fighting the golem. He put up a good fight, put up a good shield, but it just wasn't enough. It really did a number on him, and so it's up to you to defeat it. Eventually you defeat it, and you see the elder maker make the sacrifice of restoring it at the expense of his life. And so it restores the golem as is intended and attacks the giant corruption. And the golem self-destructs, and you're like, damn. For one, you lost the elder maker, but at the same time you lost the giant golem that was intended to pretty much help control the corruption. So you get past the giant corruption and you make it to the end, and you get sucked into the tree. And it's like a dream. You're seeing this figure tell you about how the human world was meant to perish, and it's your brother's fault. And you're like, no, my brother would never do that. You know, he's too honorable to do that. There's no way, and that you will clear his name. You eventually wake up or get spit out of the tree, and this time you're now in the kingdom of the dead. You are greeted by a merchant that gives you an overview of the lay of the land, of what he's heard, and it offends you and you get mad. But like all merchants, with the way that they speak, they're like, hey, I'm just repeating what I heard. I am not saying that your brother is at fault. And so either way, I'd still be pissed. I'd be like, why would he even dare say something like that to my face anyways? So, but whatever. The merchant tells you that you have to go see the chancellor, and you'll find him by going down the valley. So you go there. Eventually you get to this point where you end up riding this floating castle that is pulled by 2 eagle-looking dragons, and you're like, man, something like that, I gotta get on something like that. You pull a giant parkour move and you go down, jump off the cliff to eventually ride the dragon eel lizard thing, and then you proceed forward. You use your horse to navigate the dragon to eventually get on the platform. But either way, it's like, man, you must have really confidence in your horse and your ability to run through that. But it's like, all right, cool. So you make your way. Eventually you make it to the main chambers, and you are stopped. So before you can see the chancellor, well, you realize that the chancellor is just the front man. You're really wanting to see is the king, or the Lord of Bones. In order to see him, you have to go defeat the champion. So it's like another errand to run. But it's like, okay, fine. I will do another errand. I will go beat this champion, and then I'll come back so that he can then acknowledge my request. You go back to the Chancellor, you let him know you defeated the champion, and you show him proof. He reluctantly lets you in. You see the Lord of Bones, and before he can aid you, he gives you a request. And by this time, I'm like, okay, what is it with people and just asking stuff for me to do for them? Like, why can't they just do it themselves? However, I need to go rescue my brother, and so I will do it no matter what. He wants his generals back. I'm like, all right, fine. I'll go get his generals back. So you go on this quest to go return his generals. However, each general always had either a fight that they wanted me to do against them or some errand that they wanted me to do. Now, when you get all the generals, you bring them back because they're spirits, remember, they're ghosts. And so the Lord of Bones gave you a device where you can control them so they'll come back with you. And what does he do? Barbecues them. Wait, what? Like, I did all this just for you to smoke them? It's like, why are you toying with me now? It's like, why are you wasting my time? It's a big waste of my time that if that's what you were going to do, then you could have done it yourself. So eventually the Lord of Bones, as upset as I was, he does grant me new abilities. And I needed these abilities in order to enter the City of the Dead. It was a thing it was a place I needed to go. I didn't know why I needed to go there. However, that was a place that the Lord of Bones says in order for me to get my answers, I needed to go there. As I go through the City of the Dead, eventually I get to the end and I fight this wailing spirit. It's this big looking behemoth squid ghost thing that spits out other spirits for me to fight. I'm like, man, and the Lord of Bones couldn't tell me that this is the thing I would be fighting. Like, really? Dude, like, you couldn't just throw me a bone on this one? And eventually it gets defeated. Not a big deal. Nothing can scare me at this point. I just use all my abilities that I've gained thus far and give the monster a good beatdown. At the end of that, to my surprise, is the Crowfather. I thought, well, he was dead, but then again, this is the City of the Dead, so he would be there anyways. And it makes sense in full circle. As surprising as it was like, well, where else would he be when one dies? The only thing is that unlike before, he gives me more insights into what's going on and that I need to enter what is called the wells. But in order to enter the well to revive mankind, because that is a thing that is causing your brother to be imprisoned, your brother, in this case war, caused the apocalypse that was unwarranted and thus destroyed the kingdom of man. And in order to free your brother, you have to restore the kingdom of man to pretty much undo the apocalypse. And it's like, okay, I can undo that, no worries. One, I'm very optimistic about that because, it sounds like a done deal. Obviously, it's not going to be easy because the Crowfather tells you that in order to enter the well, you need 2 keys. One key is in the kingdom of the demons and the other is in the kingdom of the angels. And so you're like, okay, I gotta go get some keys. Got it. But in order to go to those locations, you have to go back to the tree and you learn that there are new passageways to navigate to. It's like saying that the tree takes you where you need to go, not where you want to go type scenario. And it's like, okay, however, if it is the thing that's going to help me clear my brother's name, I'm off for it. When you go back to the tree, you have now the passageway to Lost Light, and this is where all the angels are. So you go in, you navigate through the valley, and it's like pretty scenic, not too bad. At least it's not dark like it is in the Kingdom of the Dead. In order to continue my journey, I need to go to the top of this tower to go see this person named the Archon, who is the big boss. He then there proceeds to tell you what happened, that the corruption took hold of everything, and so everything is in disarray. In order to help you on your quest, he needs a rod of Arafel in order to clear the path so that you can continue on the journey. However, that path to get the rod is located in the Kingdom of Man. So you now go to planet Earth and find this rod. So as you go there, you see the corruption has taken root because of the apocalypse. You meet these groups of angels that are hell guards, known as the hell guards, and they give you the lowdown of what's going on in the area and guide you in where you need to go in order to find these rods. And so you proceed on that adventure. However, you meet some of these big, strong, four-armed monsters that just bulldoze you like a rag doll, like as if you're not even there. And so it's not an easy thing for sure. And it's just unbelievable to take that the apocalypse just ruined everything in the world. And you're like, did my brother really do this? I will believe my brother. But at the same time, I'm like, man, this is the consequences of his action. Like, he better be innocent. He better not have wanted this. And so either way, you go through this ordeal of getting the rod together. And as you're piecing it piece by piece, you run into the Hell Guard and they tell you more details about the area. Once you got the final piece, which wasn't easy, you end up fighting these big monsters called the Nos, and they just spit out like baby bees everywhere. And so those things were a pain. It's just one giant horde of zombie looking monsters attacking you one after another. But luckily the angel weapons actually were made of good use, because they have ones that are rapid fire and then they have ones that were grenade launchers, and the grenade launchers really did most of the heavy duty damage. A few times I would go in without those weapons, and I realized, yeah, like, no, you definitely need these weapons in order to be able to go through this with zombie humans coming at you from left to right, and then add in those big giant monsters with the four arms coming at you, and then add into that these zombie monsters that are burning up and just blow up the second that they get next to you. So it was not easy. It was definitely one of those, you have to move quick and get in and get out as fast as you can, or else they'll just consume you from all directions. Once you return back to Archon, you give him the rod. I had certain ways with that moment, because the way he grabbed the rod, it's like he snatched it out of my hand. He couldn't say thank you or stretched out his hand for me to hand him the rod. Nothing. He just snatched it out of me. And I'm like, where are your manners, dude? Really? However, he did say instead of clearing the path, he would clear the whole area for me. So I would forgive that minor misstep, because he did do something greater than what I wanted. It's like, all right, now to get to there, he did give me a flying companion, a griffin. And if you're not there dodging and weaving, that thing would have just bitten your head off. So it's like, well, who the heck trained him? But it's like, you know what? I don't care. I just need to continue my journey. It's taking me to where I need to be. So it was very scenic, just riding the bird and just taking in the scenic view. It was very, very soothing. However, during that ride, his last sentence is, he can help you on end my quest. It's like, it was like a lot of reflection time, because there was nothing else to do. Either A, plummet to your death, or B, just ride that animal horse, griffin, or whatever, to the required location. So it definitely left a lot of moments for you to just think about, like, he snatched the rod out of my hand, and his last sentence, like, the way he said that sounds very sus. But okay, fine. I need to see the scribe? Alright, fine, because he'll tell me where I need to go next. Got it. Like all things, the pathway wasn't easy. It was a combination of just navigating the area, using a new power that allowed me to enter and exit into different points. And sooner or later, I finally met the scribe. He was different. He was just sitting, throwing books at me, and I'm like, this is it? But it's like, okay, fine. After a couple bit of dodging and weaving, throwing in some attacks, he eventually was defeated. And as I approach to learn more about what happened, he then tells me the truth. The inkling truth you kind of knew deep down, because of how everything turned out, that it was the Archon all along. This effing person. That's how he wants to play? Alright. You spare the scribe, and I think out of just being upset for being played is why you let him live. It's like, you know what? You're just probably following orders. You probably banished you here anyways. And so you told me exactly what I wanted to know. I'm gonna go meet the Archon again. So now you go back to the Archon to confront that he was a liar. He did admit that it was him all along, that he betrayed the angels, and that you see that corruption did get a hold of him, that he was also corrupted as well, and being that powerful to get corrupted was something shocking to see. Corruption stemmed from just him staring into the abyss of the corruption that was coming, and that's why he did what he did. However, I don't tolerate that. 1, he lied. 2, he destroyed the city. 3, he lied again. And so now it's time to set things straight. Unfortunately, he catches me by surprise and then gives me this big telekinetic attack that sends me flying. But eventually I land on a platform enough to where I can give him a good beat down. And so eventually he's defeated, and it took a minute. It definitely took a minute, you know, his little shield thing that he goes in the air. If you don't time it right, it can definitely do some damage with his corruption attack, spreads around the area. But either way, he's no match for you. I got this guy, not a big deal. After you defeat him, you get the angel key, and so where do you go next? You gotta go to the demon realm. And so you go in, and look who's there, Crowfather, again. At that point, be like, how is he even following me? How is he even allowed to go through the exit the kingdom of the dead anyways? But it's like, you know what? Maybe that's a spirit thing. And so I won't even try to rationalize the process of how he's coming and going. All I know is I gotta go see the ruler of the kingdom of the dead, which is Samael, in the dark castle where his kingdom is. However, the whole area is all busted. And then eventually I do run into the merchant again, and him too. I'm like, how are you here? Well, you're technically alive. In my mind, you're technically alive. But merchants have a way with words, and so they have their ways of going about. So he tells you more about the area, about Samael and the Blackstone, which is his castle or his kingdom, and kind of gives you an overview of the area, why like everything is being broken apart, everything is tearing down, and it's all due to the corruption, because the corruption is just feeding off of all the negative energy, and so that is why the area is all being torn apart, versus in the kingdom of the angels or lost light, only the angels were corrupted, but everything else was more or less the same. So eventually you make it to the top, and you were thinking about seeing Samael, but unfortunately you see Lilith, who is the creator of all demons and Nephilim. At the same time, is claiming to be your mom. You're like, no. But then she rebuttals that remark by saying that she created the first Nephilim, and then after that Nephilim, all were created. So you're kind of like, man, does she have a point? You're like, whatever. She tells you how to see Samael, but not in the current place. You have to travel through time when he was in the castle, because you don't know where he is, and neither does Lilith. So you're like, okay, fine, I'll go find him myself. And as you leave, like everybody else is saying, you're like, hey, just think about returning your people to life again versus the kingdom of man. And you're like, okay. And you go on the journey to go find Samael. Eventually, you make it to Samael's throne room in the past, and as you're talking, he's talking to you. The fact that only one of the horsemen was there, and then he puts two and two together that, hey, no one knows you're here. He kind of calls your bluff. He's like, hey, just give me the key. I won't tell anybody. Don't worry. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. He calls my bluff. And it's like, oh man, now I gotta fight this guy too. But it's like, you know what? After all the fighting I've done, I think I'm strong enough to deal with this guy. And so you go through a little bout. You pretty much prove to Samael that you're strong enough to fight him because of everything you've been through. You do beat him, and he reluctantly gives you the key. He doesn't just give it to you, he just like throws it at your feet like, here, peasant, here's your key. So you pick it up and he disappears, and part of me would have been like, well, where did he go? Because he clearly isn't in the present, so what make him leave? But he left before you couldn't even ask him. So you got what you need, you got what you came for. Part of me would want to ask him like, hey, in a world where corruption is present, where would you go? Just to kind of figure out like, hey, you know, why would you not be here? Either way, he leaves before you can ask him. which is a bummer because that would have been a cool question to get an answer from because he's not in the present. And so now you got both keys. Now you got the demon key and the angel key, and so now that gives you access to the well. So you go back to the Crowfather and you let him know like, hey, look, I got these keys now. With Crowfather, it's never simple. His messages seem like riddles that have hidden meanings, and it's one of those like, why do I feel that you're just not telling me the truth? Yes, this is gonna be a hard decision I'll have to make, but why can you just not say it? It's like one of those things like, hey, you just need to go figure this out on your own, deal with this personally, and then figure out what to do at the moment. Fine, now that you have the keys, guess where the door is? It's in the root of the tree where it takes you to different places, and you now open this gateway to the well. And as you enter the well, who do you encounter? You encounter Absalom, known as the Avatar of Chaos. So in other words, the corruption ended up picking a champion, and it happens to be your former brother that you kind of killed back in the day. They weren't doing good things, hence the nickname Kinslayer, because him and his other siblings were just destroying their fellow brothers and sisters. And so you fight Absalom, but he's definitely a lot stronger than before because he has the power of chaos with him. The fight was tough, however, you still beat him, and history kind of repeats itself again, whereas your brothers are begging for forgiveness, and where he was residing, your scythe was there too, and instead of reaching out for his hand like he did in the beginning, he reached out for his weapon. That's what he deserved for everything he did, especially for being the Avatar of Corruption. Now with all your enemies defeated, you're at the edge of the well, Crowfather appears, you're like, what do I even do? Like, I don't know what am I gonna do. It's like, okay, I see a big well down there. What am I to do? And so you're given the option, either A, restore the kingdom of man, which will help free your brother, or B, bring back the Nephilim. You go with option A because the reason why you destroy the Nephilim was because they were just being too violent and causing mayhem. And why would you bring them back? They reaped what they sowed. And so in the case with helping your brother, it's like, no, like he did nothing wrong. And so I'm going to help my brother who's always been by your side. And so you decide to jump into the well and pretty much just sacrifice yourself so that your brother can be freed and in the end restore the kingdom of man. And so that was the journey. It was a lot of running of errands for people, meeting some of the shadiest people you ever met, seeing the extent of the corruption one world to another, and then seeing own enemies come back. And so definitely it wasn't a boring adventure. It definitely required a lot of grit and belief that your brother was right, because everyone was blaming your brother for all the mess anyways. And it's like, no, my brother would never do that. It's like, we all have that one brother that they're just too noble to do anything shady. And it's like, there's no way. It was up to you to ensure that your brother was free. That concludes this reflection series. Overall, not too many hard choices. It was just one obstacle after another, running errands for people that was pretty annoying, and everybody talking smack that my brother did it when he didn't. So it's like, all right, I'll prove you all wrong. That strong belief that there's no way your brother would do it. And with that, folks, that is the end of the reflection series for Darksiders 2. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned for more. And until then, take care. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.